Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans from around the world, welcome back. I never think what I'm going to say when I open these things up. So, Prof, how's my hair?
It actually looks good. Like when you just came in, it looked awful, and you kind of magically fixed it.
I don't like this bit in front of my face right here. I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll fix it. STYKO, what do you give it out of 10?
Can I go into the negatives?
Sure, you can go into the negatives. That's fine.
Okay, like minus 1,100,000.
Okay, cool. So we're doing episode 7 right now. Just going to quickly give everybody who's tuning in via audio or later down the line what we're going to be talking about. Obviously, you can see we've got Janko here. I'll introduce him in a second. I just want to get him to sit there for a little while longer. We're going to be talking about NIP, Dignitas. Obviously, Valve just opened up some new things to do with how the major qualification is going to work later in the year. All the different leagues we've got going to war right now. Those bits and pieces, we'll be doing some fantasy for DreamHack Leipzig, which will be later on. That's what you can expect in the show. Anyway, let's get this one underway. Janko, hello, how are you?
Hey Chad, I'm great. I think your hair is 10 out of 10. I don't know what's wrong with them, dude.
I agree. It's just striker. I don't know what the fuck.
Look, I saw the version before that, and I'm just counting that into my yeah.
Well, I don't know. You've probably seen more versions of his hair than me. You know, we weren't that intimate like maybe you guys are with the show and everything. But
true.
That's fine.
It looks better from the other angle because I'm watching myself on YouTube right now, and I think it looks better the other way around. But that's really
I just hate that Striker just made this layup for Janko to wreck us 2 minutes into the podcast. I'm so mad right now.
See, this is what the desks are missing: is the Janko fucking destruction. But that's not the point. The point is, Janko, 2020. How's things going so far? You guys qualified for Katowice.
Yeah, that was obviously a big one for us. The timing of it wasn't the greatest, as I have let the people know publicly, not just because of our Christmas, but also because just it's still in the player break. Like, why in the world are you scheduling this at this time when there's nothing else to play for? But whatever, like we came to Belgrade for a short boot camp, just a couple of days, because people didn't really play too much individually even during the break, and we just felt it's gonna give us the best chance to qualify, and we managed to do it on day one. So that was like a relief, basically just getting everything done in day one. But actually the start of the year has been great for us. I mean, we can only talk about the practice and that qualifier, but towards the end of last year, with the last 2 events obviously very disappointing for us. So we were just we had like a team talk for the end of the year, managed to pinpoint some of the issues we thought were the biggest ones affecting our game, and came into 2020 with a lot of resolve to address those issues and try to fix them and try to do a better job. And so far it's been going really good. We're very excited and anxious to play in Blast next week and finally play some LAN again.
Yeah, it's been quite the off period there, and that was something which I think a lot of people were curious about, those dates there for the qualifier, considering still quite a while until Katowice. But anyway, that's done, that's dusted. As you said, you're boot camping. You guys are there right now. I don't know. I don't want to say like what's the main focus or anything like that, but I think last year a lot of the conversation that we were having around you guys was when you were able to win Blast Copenhagen, right? You guys kind of grabbed a lot of momentum, or at least belief in the team from that. Is that something that was kind of echoed within the team after that victory?
Absolutely. I think it really was just almost a proof of concept to the team, and saying that we are trending in the right direction, we're doing things the right way, and that we can actually, be on this level and compete with all the other teams. Blast is a bit of a different format, but Beijing was also big for us in a sense that we played EG 2 times in a best of 3, beat them. I'm not going to talk about the semi-final of that tournament, but so we were like feeling pretty good. Even in Pro League, like the second group, we managed to beat all the opponents, qualify for Pro League finals. So it really felt like things were going step by step, like they're supposed to. And then we flopped at the last 2 tournaments, really. So it was just a sign, kind of, that you cannot really get complacent either, and that you really need to stay focused, like, and pinpoint what are the things that are the most important to work on, and just keep trying to get better every day.
STRYKO, Prof, you guys got any questions for Janko in this little catch-up period here that we're whacking out, or you got nothing?
Well, I was just gonna ask, obviously, like the main from the entire year, but obviously, like a lot of it was caused by the roster instability and stuff like that. The biggest problem that FaZe had was obviously the consistency, because you showed peaks in Miami and Copenhagen, but even at other events, as you were saying. But obviously, you weren't able to keep that up across any version of the lineup. So how is that something that you're going to address, or how are you going to address it?
Well, I think, yeah, it's obviously very difficult when you're changing rosters all the time and also switching the roles of the players. You know, like we started the year with NiKo in-game lead, and then we had Neo in-game lead, then we switch him back, right? Like that affects a lot because the different in-game leaders obviously have different calling styles, different ways of looking at the game. And it felt, especially with the first lineup, you know, towards the end of it was when we won Miami, we did really good at Pro League, and then we were going into Sydney where NiKo couldn't get his visa. Like we felt really confident at that point. If he comes to this tournament, you know, we were looking at it, well, the only team really here that could give us any problems is Liquid. You know, that's how we were coming into that tournament. Unfortunately, we couldn't do anything with me playing, but you know, after that we make a roster change because the goal was not to have NiKo be the in-game leader, right? So we were looking for anyone who we could get to fill that role. But you know, it's also difficult with players having buyouts. Obviously, you have to commit to someone if you're going to bring them, right? And then you bring an in-game leader and it doesn't really turn out that he is a good fit for the team, and then you're stuck with a player for whom you had to pay a lot of money for, and just doesn't turn out that that's the guy, right? Like FaZe is a specific team. You look at the names on this team, it's very accomplished players, right? So individually and team accolades, right? You know, it cannot just be anyone who can come in and lead this team. You have to command a lot of respect. You have to have a lot of authority. You have to be a certain type of personality, and on top of that, obviously, know what you're doing, right? So for us, in that period, you know, we didn't really see anyone who was possible to get that we could bring in, which is ultimately the reason why now NiKo is the in-game leader and we have this lineup.
So just on that, like the team and the makeup as it is now, I think maybe for a lot of the viewers at home, they still probably haven't gotten a lot of information regarding broky as a player. Like sure, on the desk we were able to give what limited information we had, or you during interviews, you know, come out here and give that information there. Is he just a player in the team? What we see from him in the official matches he's played so far is what we can expect. Is he one of these sleeper guys? You know how there's always that guy in the team and everyone's like, man, this guy in practice, he's fucking sick. Just wait till he, like, you know, hits that stride. Is he have that gear in him that we can expect to see, or that could come out of him going into like 2020?
I think he most definitely has. I mean, you always have players in some of these roles where it's hard to see them shine that often. Like for us, he's the anchor player, right? So some of the times, you know, you're gonna see him have a highlight with a great hold, but most of the time it depends, you know, where the action is happening. So I think we're all like really happy to have him on the team. I think he's really skilled mechanically. You know, we always talk about how impressive he is with his communication, his game sense for a player that's so young, right? Like, I don't know if people at home really understand. Like you say, communication a lot is such a broad term, right? But it's like you're giving information, but you're also like making the job easier. For example, for your in-game leader, because you're saying things like, okay, they're saving nades here, like if we want to do something, we have to explode on them, or it has to be, you know, we have to bait nades, or they're using their nades really fast, we can end around here, things like that, right? And seeing openings and taking advantage of it, like that's really important, not just saying kind of general things like, oh, there's nothing happening, right? Like taking the communication to the next level, and he's really good at that.
Okay. Well, I think coldzera has to be one of the biggest signings that we've had in quite a while, right? Like you think about him as an individual, the type of move that was to make there, and that was someone that you were coaching when you were coaching MIBR, right? But now that you've got him in this team and living pretty close to you, I would assume, knowing how all things kind of go down in that Serbia where you run the whole town of Belgrade or some shit. But with him now part of the team, is there a difference between him as a player when he was on MIBR towards the end and now that he's with FaZe? Like, has he gone back to being, you know, actually, I won't put any words. I'll just ask the question.
Yeah, I think there is a difference in a sense of that, you know, he's being asked to do more in this team, for me specifically, right? Because I want him to be more involved in guiding other players on the map, and especially on the CT side, he has a lot of responsibility there. He's a super intelligent player. He has also a great feel for the game, has very good read. So I want him to start getting used to like using that more and taking a bigger responsibilities in that sense, because before he was more used to, with Fallen, for example, he's doing everything, and then only when he really feels like it, or he feels like he has a really good call, he says something like that, something along those lines. Here I want him, if he's on one side of the map and NiKo is on the other, and something happens on cold side of the map, a trade happens or something like that, I want him to be the guy who's going to make the call. Okay, let's speed up, let's try to take the site, or no, let's stop, let's freeze, let the other side play, like things like that, and not have NiKo be the guy who's going to do this all the time for everyone. And also, I mean, that's the benefit of having skilled and experienced players. Like you have a guy like Olof as well, who's again an incredibly smart player, and he also can see these things happening on the map. He can react, he can help. So I think that's what we're striving for, right? For all the guys to kind of be in this mode where they're used to doing this all the time, like taking more initiative basically, and not just kind of waiting for someone to tell them what to do.
Okay, and I've got one last one here. It's more of a question about like your experience so far as going from coaching these teams over the last 2-ish years. What is it, 2.5 years now? 2 years, something like that.
Year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, because I tend to, like, when we get the opportunity to interview players and they have their headset on and we get to ask them questions, like I want to try and set these guys up that I've known have been playing for years and they've seen Counter-Strike change over the last 5 years with like how competitive it is, or like the professional standards, whatever. And I set them up and I want their answer to be like, yeah, the game's changed this much, these things are different. But I think because they're constantly in it and playing, and maybe they're not as comfortable speaking on camera, that they never tend to hit that point I'm trying to lead them towards. From your perspective, over the last 2.5 years of coaching, has the game changed like significantly in the way that it's approached and played, and how good individuals are? Because I noticed just getting in, and this sounds ridiculous, obviously I'm not playing a lot of Counter-Strike, but I get in a matchmaking game and I think the general level of player there is much better than they were when I was playing matchmaking fucking 3, 4, 5 years ago.
I think that's 100% true. I don't think there's any doubt with that on any level, casual or competitive. And also when you look at individual players, but also when you look at teams, right? Like all these teams are now capable of doing everything on the map. Back when I was still doing analysis, teams were more one-dimensional. They couldn't do everything. Now you play against a team on Mirage, they know how to, do the A go, B split, A fast split, defaulting, two-wave executes, right? It's not just anymore, oh, we know this team, like, they don't really fake, or this team doesn't really use their nades a lot. They like to default and go for duels. Like, teams still have tendencies, but they're able to do a lot more, and individual players are way more skilled, so you cannot just even bully people as much as you could, before, right? Like, people are playing more smart. They don't give away advantages. They understand now where they have 5v3s. They're not gonna just let you take the round back easily. So I think the game has changed a lot, and for the better. I think it's a much higher quality of Counter-Strike individually, and looking at teams playing each other. So yeah, I think even if you look at just the changes within the game with the guns, for example, the economy, all this stuff, like that will automatically make the game change as well.
Okay, and one last one here, because you don't get the microphone in front of you as much as you used to. I want to give you a platform right now in terms of like Counter-Strike at the moment, where it is, where it's going. What do you think? Because right now everyone's searching for a solution, right? Everyone is looking for how can we monetize this, or what needs to be done better on broadcast, or what needs to be a better condition for a team. What do you see right now as the number one issue from your standpoint with how the whole ecosystem's unfolding?
I think, there's definitely too many tournament organizers, right, in general, but whether we are at a stage where that's still a good thing or it's starting to become a bad thing, that's kind of hard to tell. That's always hard to tell. But I think obviously at the end you look at any product competitive, whether it's sports or whatever it is, you don't have 7 tier 1 leagues, in England in football, right? You have the Premier League, Championship, and all these other tiers. There's not the same league who's trying to get teams and talent. Maybe a better example is even in the US, right? You have the NFL, the NBA. There's not 7 leagues of this type, and that's the best for everyone involved, right? Except for if you want to make a team and you want to get into the NBA, that's like kind of really hard, right? Unless there's another expansion. But other than that, for the players, for the teams, for the fans, for everyone is the best. And I think that's the end game for Counter-Strike as well, for it to have a league with maybe 2 seasons and a couple of big tournaments outside of that, tournaments like Cologne, for example, like every year you should have a tournament like Cologne, and maybe 2 or 3 tournaments more like that. Other than that, you have a league with the finals and that's it. But whether that's going to be in 2 years or 3 or 5, I'm not sure. I think another thing is the sponsors actually really need to stop with this, like, oh, Counter-Strike, it's like guns and blood, and like we don't want to sponsor this. But I really don't think it matters, and I think everyone who's our age, maybe a generation older than us, and especially generations that come after us, I don't think anyone cares about this, and I'm not going to buy this product because it's sponsored in it's a video game, like people sponsor things in real life that's actually way more violent and everything. So I think once that starts happening and more of these mainstream sponsors kind of realize that it's not a big deal and they can put more money into CS, I think that will help the ecosystem as well, because in that sense, then you have one product that they can all get behind. You have people who will put maybe more money into like sponsorships, content, and everything, because I don't think it's changed much from when I was there. There's a lot of good ideas for content, whether it's at the actual tournament, leading up to the tournament, after the tournament, but people just cannot sell.
They don't have the money, Janko. Let me tell you the answer I get every fucking day of my life, mate.
They don't have the tournament organizer doesn't have the money, but they cannot even, find someone to sell it to and make it DHL's whatever, like the Vodafone thing that was at some of the ESL tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Like things like that. So they're not capable of selling it. They themselves don't have the money, and then it's like, well, can you do this for free, Chad?
And most of the time I say yes, Janko. But we're gonna get moving with the recent news. So let's bang that one up, Lucas. Let's get. All right. Well, we're back. That was a nice little quick one for you. Now we're gonna be getting stuck into all of the recent news. A lot's actually happened in a week, and we may as well start with the biggest of them all. And I know Prof's a massive fan of. I actually noticed STYKO made the tweet.
What?
The spiciest tweet I think STYKO's ever made in his life. I think, if I'm remembering rightly.
I'm so confused right now. What did I tweet about again?
Maybe I've confused your tweet with someone.
I mean the reunion thing, or what?
No, fuck. I'm gonna have to go find it.
But
anyway,
he was fanboying Dignitas. If we're talking about Dignitas.
Oh, I didn't say that. I never went that way.
He wasn't, but you could read between the lines, because that is what you do as as a person that does interviews. You read between the lines, and you could see that STRYKO is like, "Why is everyone hating on these guys? They're so good. I love the NIP."
So that was anything like that, but okay.
Let's do this. Get Janko in TeamSpeak. The producer would have linked you like this long link,
yeah,
and we have our thumbs there. So we want to bring those up, because let's do this. This would be fun. This is a nice one to kick this off. So we're obviously, ladies and gentlemen, watching the stream right now, talking about Dignitas, which is NIP, or the old NIP. You've got Forest, you've got Geralt, you've got Freiburg, you'd exist, and you've got Halzok, the AWP player from Norway. You got Fifi in their coaching. That's the team. Now they're over there, they're doing this shit. Now, what I want to look at here is, do we think that this team will be a competitive top 10 team ever? All right, well.
Shit, let me look at the top 10.
Hey, look.
Are we there?
Yeah, no. Okay, where are FaZe?
Not in the ESL one, we're not.
Oh, you're number 9 at this point.
There you go. You're in the top 10.
Barely, but you are.
Mouse, Liquid, Fnatic, EG, Vitality, 100 Thieves, Na'Vi, FaZe, G2. Fnatic is at 11 at the moment. And
I think I'm gonna go with this one, but I feel like they will be in the top 10 at some point, but I think like on a consistent level, I'm not really seeing it.
So that screenshot got leaked the other day, Janko. Was it your team practicing against them?
Yeah.
Okay, so blink twice if they got more than 5 rounds.
Shit. I don't really remember. But
I didn't count the blinks.
It was just practice, you know, like, and for us, like, this year has been going great, so we just had they just started playing, so I wouldn't really like take too much away from it, you know.
So we didn't get 5 rounds.
we started playing on the easier side, so it's kind of hard. When my boys get rolling, you don't want to be on the other side of that.
So let's do it, Prof. Can you set up here all of the potential like the positive of doing this move for Dignitas is great. It's marketing. Everybody who's been watching Counter-Strike since they were the best team in the world, they love NIP, the NIP magic, Forest and Get Right, lovable characters, Freiburg as well in there. Exist doesn't say a lot, whatever. Halzerk's gonna take some of the Norwegian fans, whatever. There's some positives like there for that team from a marketing standpoint. Can you cite all the negatives of the actual roster for everybody playing at home?
I mean, just starting with their individual form, Get Right. Like, I won't say awful, because his form was worse before he quit NIP. He had like an even lower like level than he was in the last like couple of months. So just bad, I think. Forest, okay. Exist, we didn't see play for a year now almost. What is now half a year, and he wasn't fragging well. Freiburg from Heroic as well. Like just on the fragging level looks very bad. Looking at their age is super fucked up. I just need to dig out the actual stat. So
he's like 27 or something, right?
27.6, and people are saying like give him half a year. So when we give him half a year, they're gonna be 28 years average. That is super old. That's like 4 years older than the average of all players. 2 years is older than like MIBR, which is one of the oldest teams. Not MIBR, Vitality. And then even that's like a year older than the oldest good team we ever had, which is Virtus.pro in 2017, when they were like second at the major, won ELEAGUE. And after that, they dropped off. So these guys are like 2 years after that point. Okay, they have Forrest, who is kind of an outlier. He plays like he's not 30, 31 that he is. So that's also an issue. So the longer they go, they're going to be worse. Like, it doesn't matter whatever people say. Like, I believe it to a degree that age doesn't matter that much. When you have so many players going so deep in their careers, I don't think that can be, like, they're not going to get better. That is, I think that can be stated pretty obviously.
STYKO, you with that line of thought even?
I'm sorry?
Do you agree with that line of thought?
I mean, yeah,
do you think
sure.
Differently?
Like, I never said anything about this. Obviously, I have my own reservations about these things as well. It's not something that I've tried to hide. I was just saying that basically I was trying to balance the vocal majority that was saying that this team is never going to do anything and they were going to be a shit show and they were never going to beat anybody, right? Which is just, I don't think that's realistic to assume, especially when you look at, obviously all these names are going to be, at least apart from Halzerk, they're all experienced names, and it's not like they've been out of the game for I don't know how long, you know. Like sure Freiburg and Exist have been out of the game for like half a year, but I don't think that's enough for them to just lose everything they know, right? So I don't think they're...
Well, it does help that they're going to be playing this B-site league where almost no like elite teams are, and they don't have to go through open qualifiers and stuff like that, where they're be wrecked by like some random team they never heard of and then go through all of that. But I don't know. That is definitely going to help, because in that environment they are going to pick up some wins. I think exactly. It's inevitable.
That's what I was thinking. Like among that competition, at least from what we've heard reported so far, like they're probably going to be like, how many teams are there? 12 teams, I think, right? That have been reported.
12, but
I feel like they could be in the top 6 in that pretty easily. Like it shouldn't be that hard to be in the top half of that league. Obviously, so you know, we can talk about how much of an achievement that is, but
is it going to be like a team better than Mad Lions though? Like you can see.
I imagine I could be. Okay.
I was going to say this. There's no way I think that they could compete with a team like Mad Lions unless that Halzerk kid is just fucking unreal.
That's the thing. Like, obviously the fragging department is just going to be the biggest question. Like, if it's going to be, that trio that you were talking about, Exist, Freiburg, Get Right, if none of them are at least like close to close to like a good level, like it's obviously gonna be hard for them to do well on a consistent basis, because however good Halzark is, he's not gonna be a Zaiwu, and Forrest obviously is not a megastar as he used to be. He puts up good numbers on a consistent basis, but he doesn't put up the same as high of peaks as he used to, you know, and stuff like that. So it's obviously going to be very top heavy in this team, which is the biggest worry.
Okay, so I think we can probably put a pin in this Dignitas discussion and the fact that as a marketing move, as a way to get some hype around it, it's probably one of the best moves you could have made. But in terms of the competitive nature,
I'll just finish with one stat line. So Exist has been below a 1-point rating since end of 2016. Freiburg since like, let's say about the same, end of 2016. And then Get Right dropped a bit later, which is like start of 2018. They've been like below a 1.0 rating.
Just in Freiburg's defense out of all those individuals is when he was playing in Heroic, he looked like a different player, like in the way that he was approaching the game than he did when he was back.
It was definitely not an entry fragger, let's say that.
Yeah, there was different roles going on for him there, and I thought that he was playing himself, you know, much better within that team. But yeah, in terms of fragging power, right now with everything we know, they will not be a competitive unit. Let's hope that things are different. But anyway, let's keep this one moving. We're going to be talking about Nork, because he is now the replacement for Forrest on NIP. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, they added Twist earlier in 2019 to come in as the primary AWPer, and Nork was doing the primary AWPing job for Gamers Legion. Can anyone confirm, deny that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so now that they're going to bring him in, they're going to get Nork on the secondary AWP. I don't know if that's because they don't want to disrupt what they've got going on with Twist or whatever, but this kind of feels like one of those situations we've seen plenty of times before for Twist, where he's come on in as the AWPer, and then he's kind of been shifted off of that role as it goes.
But he's meant to stay there, right? Knock is actually meant to be the secondary one.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. How long does that last?
Okay, how long does that last? That's the.
Let's do the yays and the nays first. Let's go with, do we think that this is a good move from NIP?
Like overall, right?
Yeah, overall.
Without thinking about the role stuff.
It's a good decision, because now it's a whole new team. We should never think about this as the NIP of the past. Like, it's the same kind of thing we did with VP, but I think these guys will be more competitive. Because if we go through the roster, I think Plopsky started to show some good things, especially on certain maps as a role player. I don't think Lekro does a terrible job from the in-game leading standpoint. I don't think he's anything like, you know, he's not a glaive, but there isn't another glaive out there. Obviously, Rez, I think that he said that he gave up a lot of roles to Plopsky, so maybe they can work some shit out now that they got the new boy in there. Nork, and who the fuck am I forgetting?
Oh, that was Rez?
Did you
Twist, Rez, Lekro, Nork, Plopsky. I did them all. Okay, never mind. They're all there. So this is a good move from the team. Janko, have you had the chance to practice against this Nork kid very much?
No, only maybe a couple of times when they were in Gamer Legion, but that was also a long time ago since we practiced that team as well. But from what I could see, even some of the games or that they played or that I caught, like, he looked like he was an okay player. It's hard for people, you know, like from what I know, like they had so many changes and like different players playing. Like, it's very hard for you to play well when this is happening all the time. Also, motivation wise, right? Like, you're always changing a player. You don't know what your lineup is. You know, you feel like kind of lost in that sense. But I think it's a good change for them. You know, he's another young player, one of these up and coming talents in Sweden, like Brolan, Plopsky. You know, I think he's the next guy kind of on that list. So I think for NIP, definitely a great change. And we're seeing this trend more and more from top teams. When they want to make a change, they're getting young players. You know, they're getting someone new who hasn't really played on that level, instead of recycling some of the players that have been in and out, because I think everyone is realizing now that this is the way to go, you know, and there's more and more talent. That the problem before was, you know, they don't have enough experience, they will not, you know, figure it out on this level. Where that's proving to be untrue more and more. They're actually doing pretty well for themselves as soon as they join the team. You know, obviously a couple of tournaments, playing in a LAN environment, big crowd in this, but they can more than hold their own, and then there's really no downsides to it.
Okay, well, let's do this. Do we think this team is going to be, get your thumbs ready again, do you think that this team is going to be better or worse, like in terms of rankings, or where they currently are in 6 months' time? So thumbs up.
Like the NIP in 2019 or
yeah. So they're currently ranked 10th, right? Or okay, just outside the top 10. Do we think that in 6 months' time they're going to be ranked higher than that or lower than that? Thumbs up for higher, thumbs down for lower.
Why don't we have like an even thing?
Yeah, I'll just say they'll stay about there.
I also think
but it doesn't mean that they won't play better CS, but it's just too many teams around that area that it's very unlikely for them to just, not very unlikely, but I don't see why they would be like better than a FaZe, let's say.
That's fair enough. I guess it's a wait and see moment. So fuck the thumbs. We'll keep this one moving because we got 6 minutes left in the recent news. Let's go to this one. I want to talk about this one. MSL returns to North. What the fuck is going on at North, guys? Does anyone have any idea?
Dude, I feel like what else would you do though? If you're in that position, who the fuck else would you get?
It's the right play, but Jesus.
North is like the closest we get to a reality TV show about Counter-Strike, you know? Like watching Big Brother or something. Like, it's been so long now. Like, it was this insane project like Football Club Copenhagen, you know? Let's give everything to these guys, you know, the facilities, the salaries.
3 years now.
And it's been like so ridiculous. Like, I mean, kind of feels bad saying it, but some of the failures that they had, like, as a team, like, it's actually unbelievable. Like, the amount of times they failed like to qualify for something, or when they qualify for like Pro League finals and then they lose to like Sharks and get knocked out like 2 years ago, you know, it's just like baffling really. Like that team has, I think it's a lot of good players on that team throughout their lineups. I think obviously the org is like supporting them in a good way, and it's just one of those things where you feel like after a while it's been going so wrong for them that they get into this mindset, and then it's like it gets really hard because then you're looking at everything and trying to fix everything, and in reality it's like a lot more simpler than that, you know. Just need to get the players some confidence and everything's going to be fine. But yeah, I think like jokes aside, I think it's a good change for them. I mean, I was surprised when they removed them in the first place. Like, I thought they were doing good. I thought like for that team he was like a good fit as an in-game leader, so I wasn't really sure what was going on there.
Didn't he just win MVP at DreamHack?
And then the major happened, and then they kicked him after the major qualifier where they lost to Vega. Was one of the teams. I remember a Mirage game where they played like super weird, and then there was a fight in the team from what we remember. Like during that game, I think someone even said it on the broadcast because the group stage was like close to the analyst desk. And
we could hear it all.
Pimp shared some information on the stream.
Yikes.
So yeah, that's how it happened. Like, I understand why you remove MSL from a team. It's like, oh, we want to be the best team in the world. We want to destroy Astralis and build like a Danish legion of fans. But you can't do that. I mean, it proved that they can't do that, and they only became worse. So now they're okay. Let's bring back MSL. Let's try to like not be a complete shit show, and then we can think about other moves down the line.
Just quickly, like just to go over, these are all the players that they've had in this roster since forming as North, right? For those who aren't aware, they came from Dignitas. But
are you sure you want to get into this?
Just listen to some of these names. So Rubino, whatever, right? Magus. They had Rugger as a coach. They've had Cage and B. Now Cage is back. They've had Config. They had NiKo in on loan. They had Mertz. They had MSL. They've had Ave as a coach. They've had Mithra as a coach. They've had Cadian. They've had Volder, and now they've got Yugi on the bench. That is since the 20th of March in 2017.
Yeah, 3 years now.
Jesus Christ. Okay, well, fuck. We don't. Did anyone have anything they want to say about North?
No.
Okay.
Good luck.
Complexity in the EU minor after all. Now, we were doing some discussion about it. Was it yesterday we were talking about this?
Like a couple of days ago, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. My day's blurring away. I don't fucking know what the time is half the time. But we were talking about this, about where they had to play, because someone linked on Reddit that they were signed up to play in the European qualifications, right? Which, you know, started a discussion. Oh, we thought that they could. Where did it come from that we thought that they could play in North America? Was it a Star Series thing?
Yeah, it was like an addition to the rules that apparently came at Star Series, but I think was part of the whole thing for longer than that. But obviously, yeah, if we want to get into it,
no one used that, never ever. So
yeah. But I mean, obviously the way we understood it, or the way people understood it wrong, was that they thought that people from like Europe could transfer to NA if they stayed there for a long enough time. But obviously the rules seems like they were just not written in a clear way. It just looks like that rule was just introduced for like South American teams who reside in North America, and obviously those two regions come into the same minor, so they obviously should be allowed to play in like a different subset or sub-region.
Yeah, it's called like a sub-region. So North America is a sub-region of Americas and South America as well. So you can switch between sub-regions. And if you don't have a minor like the South African guys, then you can go anywhere and play a minor. Or if you have like 2+2+1, then you can pick one of the two.
Then choose,
Yeah. So that's the thing.
So
that's a clarification on the rules, basically.
Just to push this home, at the very first majors, I forget if it was the first one I attended or the second one, I was talking with the Valve devs and they questioned how they think that, this is before the minor system came in, how teams should be like decided to play where. And I said that the way we used to do it in Counter-Strike with the WCGs and the ESWCs, etc., back in the day was nationality. Now, WCG was this really stark contrast. You had to have all 5. ESWC, it was 3 out of 5. That was something I said to them fucking 4.5, 5 years ago now. So from the people I was talking to regarding these rules, it seems clear that Valve still want to keep it as a nationality rule set. As to having the core of the team, their nationality is where you will be competing, depending on region. So, do we think that this overall is good? Should we keep it this way, or do we think we probably don't have enough time to go deep on this topic, do we?
No. Maybe later when we talk about the major changes, but I think it's fine as it is.
And do we want to quickly just touch on this Na'Vi thing, or we want to wait because the news might come out between this show and the next one with the actual roster? So we could just fucking wait. They won't be playing before we talk about them again, so fuck it.
I think it's just another case of like big teams being blocked from making moves they, in the past, like 2-3 years ago, they could do easily and wouldn't even think about it. Like no one could stop fucking Na'Vi from getting a flit from 4s 2-3 years ago. That would happen instantly. And now all of these big teams like MIBR in the past like 2 years are struggling to find the new 5th, which is kind of hampering the top scene, maybe like the top 10, but in the same way giving like more power to the tier 2, 3 teams to build stuff.
This would be something that would be nice, and I'm sure Janko and other teams and coaches may appreciate this, is if the players, or if there was like limitations on the length of contracts, or if contracts all had like a window of time of like, oh yeah, we're going to be reviewing the contracts in fucking, let's say December. So like, everyone can be a free agent in December kind of thing, like it is with the other leagues and shit like that.
I'm sorry. Go for it.
Just to touch on the Na'Vi, for me it's strange that they are not pushing harder for some of these players that they want. I mean, for me at least, I look at Na'Vi as this org, they're the juggernaut org of the CIS region, so you feel like whoever they would want to get, who the best player is in CIS, they should be able to get him. Of course, barring something unreasonable, as if like whatever, someone's asking $1 million for some player from any of these teams. That's unreasonable. But even if a player is like 300-400K, like the best player that you really want, I think Na'Vi as an org like should pay for that. Like you shouldn't really, because look at Na'Vi, like the last 2-3 years, right? They were never the best team in the world. Like for a while they were in the conversation, maybe a little bit, but it was always like, oh, but they have this like great talent on the team, especially like when Electronic came in, Simple, Electronic, then Flamey as well, right? But there was always like this one thing that they were missing. So I just feel like if they keep kind of getting, like not getting what they really want maybe, or what they feel like they really need, like they're not gonna, because I look at them as a team and as an org, they're aiming to be number 1, not top 4 or top 3, right? Like I'm not saying whoever they end up with is not a good player or is not going to be a good fit for them. It just, when you hear that they try to get one guy or the other guy and then they cannot, like I'm like, why not?
We've heard like 10 fucking different names throughout the last 2 weeks or something.
Then you're wondering, okay, so like this guy is like which one on their list, but yeah. And what you said, Chad, I think it comes along with the league stuff. Once you have that set, then I think you're gonna have things like in all the other leagues, free agency, restricted, unrestricted free agent, all this stuff. Like I think like end game is something like that, and it's gonna make everything much more easier.
Well, that works perfectly, Janko. You've segued me like in the old days. We're going to be going now to talk about the, we've titled it League Warfare.
Ooh.
Now, for those people not too familiar, there's a little bit of a tug of war going on right now. We've got ESL with the ESL Pro Tour, which is almost like a year-long league. But if we look at just their league itself, it is the ESL Pro League. DK's just released a report of some variety, which we'll talk into a little bit more. There's some more details in there that have just come out. B-site, dribs and drabs of information have been coming out. We've obviously learned that Thorin and Monty have a big part in the content and how that's going to be driven over there. And they've been releasing some information. They did a talent thing last night. And then obviously Blast, they just recently changed their entire format because the best of ones, it wasn't working. They obviously got a lot of community backlash last year, and they've changed things up completely. And actually, let's start with Blast because out of all, they're the one coming up.
I have a question. Like, how did they get away with this?
They're the ones winning at the moment.
Last year, everyone's like, "Oh, fuck Blast, get them out," blah blah. And now they have their own like month for the league. No one's impeding on anything. They're doing.
But the thing is, like, none of the orgs were like that. None of the orgs were saying, "Okay, Blast, they're fucking up our schedule" or anything. They were actually they liked the way that they were set up in Blast. As far as I could tell, obviously, like from.
I mean, the community backlash was there. Obviously, the orgs are a different thing. Yeah.
Of course, so I'm not that surprised that orgs actually sided with them because obviously. At least compared to these problems between Pro League and this B-site thing, like the Blast is actually a pretty sick tournament just because they're unrestricted by all these scheduling clashes and stuff like that. So they could actually get almost whoever they wanted, I imagine.
Well, like I don't understand how they got the schedule they wanted, and
I'm not sure. It feels like this whole ESL versus B-site came first, or I mean it's kind of been around like between FaCEIT and ESL for a while. But now that this kind of escalated this year, I feel like they just found like a space to fit into kind of quietly a little bit, and that's how it just worked out. They were pretty smart about it, clearly.
Yeah, I think it's also, I mean, the scheduling is kind of intentional, at least when it comes between B-site and ESL. They want teams to have to choose and not being able to play in both. Where Blast is like, yeah, you all just do whatever you want. We're just gonna chill over here. Plenty of time for people to play, and I really like the new format, like that they have. It makes it you don't spend too much time playing it. You can qualify very easily, just being top 2 in the first group stage. But also, if you don't, it gets harder to make the finals. But everyone can come and qualify for the finals, right? Through this like spring season, you will have qualifiers and all this stuff. So even the teams that are not there from the very beginning, they can still qualify and make the finals. Then the finals as well, they're again just like a week or something like that. So in reality, in maybe 7-8 playing days, you finish the whole league as a team. If you make top 2 at the first group stage and then you go to the finals are going to be, I don't know how many days, probably not more than 4, and that's it. No hassle, like best of 3s all the way, good prize money, good location, tournaments well run, like as a team, as an org, as a player, as even talent, probably you really don't have anything to complain about,
No, Blast make it so easy. Like
I don't know why they're getting so much hate. Even like with the old format, like I said this in MIBR, I said this in FaZe to my team, like, guys, you don't look at this like this is a different tournament, like it's more of a show than it is about being the most competitive tournament. So you need to approach it because it's very frustrating when you would play it, having to play like 3 games in a row, like even 2 games in a row, and then the game drags on, then they're rushing you to like go to the stage for the next game. You can't even like talk things through properly. This can be very frustrating for a team, but I always said to the guys, like, listen, don't worry about it. Like, we just, it's a different type of a tournament, and you need to be able to mentally reset after every game because, if you lose one game which you shouldn't, that's enough for you to not being able to make the finals. And everything except making the finals in that type of format is like doesn't matter if you're last or third,
Yeah, I think that was something that this is the thing though, is the way that these kind of tournaments get painted on social media is how the hardcore is going to examine them. The viewer at home, like the average viewer at home who doesn't use Reddit and doesn't know what Twitter is, doesn't give a fuck about this kind of stuff, right? Like they just want to watch Counter-Strike, and that's why obviously we get higher viewership numbers when we get to the playoffs and shit, because people don't really give a fuck about group stages. But the way that these TOs get painted is it's a lack of people being able to think objectively. It's like this is a whole the format last year. in having Astralis skipping better quality events for the Blast events, that is the biggest issue out of everything across the line, right? That was the biggest issue. I think that if you're going to look at all the stuff, that's where you'd point the finger. Why is that happening when there's so many other more competitive tournaments and we want to watch the best Counter-Strike? But in terms of it just being like, it's like when teams were playing CS Summit. You know, everyone goes to CS Summit and they know that it's like a wind down event, right? The teams are still there and they're still competitive and stuff, but they're not there like they're about to win a major trophy. And I think this is one thing that people, not every game or every tournament is made the same. I think that's the thing. Whereas these three that we're discussing right now, well, they're clearly going to war. These guys are clearly, like, as we said, Blast have been able to somehow dance around this. And knowing the Blast guys, they're never the type to like, well, fuck everybody else. Blast are so good. They do like a meeting at every event with everybody to brief them constantly. And their message is never fuck everybody else. It's like, let's make this work. So yeah, it's strange that they got that bit of a rough end there. But do we, other than the format, do we have anything negative that we see with this Blast thing? Striker Prof, you got anything there?
I mean, you're saying other than the format, like Janko said, I don't think it's bad at all. It's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, I was just seeing if there's any outliers
year, anyway.
If there's anything we maybe we're overlooking.
I mean, maybe some. I mean, they still will have some qualifiers, even though that's not announced how exactly it's going to work. There are going to be some like wild card, maybe invites, stuff like that. The only minus is that it's pretty closed off. So maybe some teams, as was the big drama when this was announced, that Fnatic and Mousesports, as of now, are not a part of it because they are two top 4 teams. I think that's the only like minus. But what can you do? Like they have
generally
enough.
I mean, one thing that they've been trying to push for, or at least like try to emphasize, was that like it was going to be an open, like there was going to be a way for anybody to to make it to either the spring finals or even the global final and actually win the last 1 million or whatever. Obviously, like this way, one thing that is negative is that obviously it's just 2 spots per seasonal finals, and you will have to win. Oh, you will have to go to the finals, actually win it or something to actually get to the global final as well. So obviously for you to, sorry.
But at least there's an option, like better than last year ends.
Yeah,
like
of course. But it's 2 spots from the showdown thing, though, as far as I know. It's 6 teams go through from the regular season into the spring finals, and then 2 additional teams come from the showdown, where it's 6 teams that didn't go through from the regular season join like some of these other qualifiers. So obviously, like it is open. Like there are ways to get into it, but it's very, very limited.
I wouldn't.
That's for them. It's fine. Like I mean,
no, of course, I'm not saying that's necessarily too bad.
That's people don't even like with Mouse. And first of all, like people negotiate these things, right? Like it's not about you're invited. Oh yeah, we're in. I don't know the details of why these teams aren't there, but Mouse also got as high as they did only in the last 3 tournaments of the year. These leagues are planned much further ahead, and when you're doing this as a tournament organizer, you don't just care where the team is ranked. Like you look at how much pull they have in social media, how much viewership they can bring. Like this is the thing with MIBR, like no matter their results, they would always bring insane amount of viewers because there's always like a lot of Brazilian fans watching their games, no matter if they're number 1 or number 16, right? So this is what tournament organizers also look at, and Mouse, at least to me, isn't one of these orgs that has like an insane following, or so if they're not like really, really good, like they ended up being at the end of the year, you don't have this other thing that you can look like. For example, in the case of MIBR, or maybe even FaZe is another org like that, Cloud9, these big orgs that have a lot of fans of the org, and then you're like, well, there are these other orgs that we think we can get more out of them, and we already have a lot of good teams, like whatever, Astralis, Liquid, Navi, all these teams are already signed up. So if we're missing 1 team out of 12 or even 2, it's not going to be end of the world. And on top of that, they can still qualify through this showdown thing.
Yeah.
So with this whole thing as well, I think something that we tend to forget here is this as well, from Blast's perspective, is them trying to make some money. So like the formats that they're going with now, they're trying to appease the community by giving best of 3s, right? Because everyone got up in arms about that format and no one said they could take it seriously. So now they've done that, and now they're looking at the best ways that they're going to be able to monetize their product. So this is the thing that I think everybody overlooks here, is the fact that this has to be a business where people make money at the end of the day, or there won't be any Counter-Strike for anybody to watch, right? Like at the moment, the only people making money, Janko and his boys, I don't mean his team, I'm talking about coaches and players, and the talent. Like, I'm getting paid. I'm not seeing the downsides that I'm having. I don't get to spend much time at home. That's it. But otherwise, I get paid, right? Whereas TOs and all these companies and stuff, they're like, this sounds so stupid. This really feels like the wrong way to push a product, having the entire community basically saying, hey guys, we got no money. But this is the truth of the matter is, and we're trying to now have this pie of Counter-Strike, which Valve owns, and they don't give a single fuck about anything else other than the billions of dollars they're constantly pocketing. And then these other TOs are now just fighting amongst themselves. This is like, and now we're about to see a bunch of different models in 2020 of what's good and what's bad, or what works and what doesn't. And I think what we could do is start transitioning over towards the B-site one now, because that's probably the one we've got. Would you say we got a lot of information about that?
We have the most
recently.
Information on that, I feel like.
Yeah. Give us the laydown, Striker.
Yeah, I mean, B-site generally is, at least as far as we know so far, it's mostly about those are the American orgs that have recently gotten teams, such as like Dignitas. There's also, I heard talks about TSM. Who else was there in that? I'm just trying to, obviously MIBR Cloud9 has like two of the main parts of it that have been there from the start. Mad Lions is one of them. I wonder if this Contact League is a Contact team is also going to be part of it, because it's like an American type org. So I would assume like they might be getting into it if B-site doesn't get any of these big teams. But generally, obviously, like so far it looks like B-site are still fighting for some of the biggest teams in the world. As far as we know, so far none of the top 10 teams have been confirmed for that or even reported on. Like the only team that has been kind of like touched upon was Astralis, and it turns out that they haven't even decided between the two leagues so far. So there's like a pretty good chance that this B-side league could just have tier 2 teams in it, and worse, obviously, with like new teams like
as we're here, like the ESL meeting thing, summit, the 3-day thing is going on like today, tomorrow.
Yeah, something like that. Somewhere around this time, yeah.
So that is going to be kind of deciding, like if people don't buy what ESL is selling, or Billy said, then they're going to be going towards the B-side thing. So I guess
is the B-site thing has a buy-in, right? Like that's the way that works. It's funded by these teams.
Yeah, so it's 2 million per team, yeah.
So I saw an interesting tweet today by Duncan, I think it was, saying that like all the things within the league are going to be funded by this buy-in from the teams. I think that was the sentiment. I don't want to get the wrong words there, but like that's the way this league has to kick off, right? Because they're kind of materializing from nothing. Now, obviously, we've seen FACEIT's involvement is obviously there, but I assume they're not the ones coming in with the bucket load of cash here. This isn't a decision from like FaceIT to come in and just whack this down on the table. This is other big wigs in an office somewhere have decided this is a venture they want to be going on. Now, in terms of, you know, if it doesn't get all the teams, they've already announced some talent, which are obviously getting the community quite excited, having Monty do a Counter-Strike event, all this kind of stuff like that. Their tack seems to be they're going to bring a different way of experiencing watching Counter-Strike. And if they do that and they're successful at that, that's fantastic for everybody, right? Even if it's not tier 1 teams, but they're still able to tell really good stories with the tier 2 teams that they may be able to get, and they're able to give more interesting content. That's all really good stuff. But the problem that I have here is, this is why my tweet today, which everyone has fucking completely taken the wrong way. I need to be a little bit more aggressive with my tweets, apparently. It was about ELEAGUE. Now, ELEAGUE aren't running Counter-Strike events anymore. As a multi-million-dollar company, Turner Entertainment, well, probably billion-dollar company, they're not running Counter-Strike tournaments anymore because it's not profitable. So my thing is, does this new venture that they have, do they have an idea, do they have an understanding that Turner doesn't, of how to make money from Counter-Strike? Because if they run for 2 years, the same thing, they come in, everything goes up. Because right now, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, all these teams who are getting bought up by North American leagues are getting bought in at inflated prices again. So what's that's going to do for the good teams? If you're like fucking FaZe Clan, let's use them as an example, I don't know why, and you find out that fucking, I don't know, Genji, a team who you're going to beat 9 times out of 10, any given, like, right, you and that you're much higher in the rankings. Let's say you're higher by 15, maybe then your FaZe clan, you're going to FaZe, you go, these motherfuckers here are getting paid this much money and we're this much better than them. We're going to pay us more. So then FaZe fork out more money and we're just going to hike everything up and fucking, look, it's great for us. We all get paid. But the thing is, that's not a sustainable like business model. That's my only worry. I think everything else seems like it's going to be cool. It's just the longevity. How long are these companies going to be around for?
Yeah, but even with like ELEAGUE, in the end, it was a good thing for like people forget this. Like ESL is a very good tournament organizer right now, but at the time that when ELEAGUE came in, like there were a lot of issues with ESL on every level when it comes to player management. When I'm not talking about talent or this, I'm talking about like the player experience at tournaments, and it was because of ELEAGUE that they had to step up their game significantly. I don't even know if they had like a dedicated department for all of this until this started happening, because teams were like and players were so elated with ELEAGUE that was all they were talking about. And then ESL probably realized, well, this is a problem. We need to step up in this department. Now they're doing a really good job at all the tournaments that I've attended, you know, in the last year or so. Like, so it's been really good in all when it comes to almost everything, you know, like, so that's what competition is there for, right? It pushes everyone else to up their game and improve their product and do a better job. Now, I understand what you're saying with like inflating this and inflating that, but that's also kind of down to the orgs. And I think it's not like it was like a couple of years back when the players had like pretty much all the power and whatever they wanted was being done. I think now you can see orgs are getting more and more involved with their teams and setting limits and boundaries and so on. And, you know, it's getting more normal in that sense, because the way it was, like, it's definitely not a structure that can sustain itself long term.
Do we know anything else about this B-site situation that's going on? Like, this is where things that I know and I can actually talk about.
But I'll tell you this as well. That's the biggest problem for some of the teams as well. There's just not enough information about either of the leagues. Like, people talk about like which teams are going to be in which league. Like, I don't even know. Like, and people ask us, you know, we talk like which. Well, I'm not sure. Like, everyone wants to go to a league that has the best teams first and foremost, but you know, that's not going to happen out of nowhere, right? Like, either these players talk to each other and they, you know, decide one way or another, you know, what they like more, what their, you know, what looks better for them, then they go to the orgs, then orgs discuss it, right? But this is like the amount of conversation that's not gonna happen for like 3 years, you know, between people, like to actually go back and forth as much. So, you know, you're being asked all these things, like I just don't know. Like, I'm hearing like this format may change. Like, what's the format that you guys are gonna have? Where are you gonna hold the damn league? Like, where is it gonna take place? Like, you hear all these things, but you do not know for sure. So you cannot make a decision until someone puts things on a piece of paper and tells you, this is how our league is gonna look, this is how the other league is gonna look, and then you look at it and you decide, right? Now, well, maybe this team will come, or oh, we have this team, and then you hear a week from now that this team that has signed has not signed. So you're like, well, how can I trust anything you say? You know, like, it's
all so fucked. Like, especially with the announcements and stuff. Like, the fact that first and foremost announced not even a fucking name for the league. First of all, they announced the talent. Like, literally, no. First of all, Soren announced himself as talent, and then the rest of the talent came in. Like, what is this backwards approach from this league? Like, they don't even have a name.
Casually announcing on ECS's Twitter a league that is dead. So,
yeah, exactly.
good
So
stuff.
It's just like this whole thing about B-site is just backwards as hell.
What Janko said about like you don't know what's going on. I talked to some people that are in like top 30, top 40 teams. They don't know what the fuck is going on. At least your team is kind of a part of the discussions. Oh, are you going to be in this league? Are you going to be in that league? These guys aren't in the discussion for any of this. They have no idea what the fuck is going on. Where are these qualifiers for like Blast? Where are the qualifiers for B-site? When is that going to happen? All of the like the ESL Pro Tour took all of the slots for all of the DreamHack opens. So now qualifying for a DreamHack is like insane, because you have MIBR and all of these guys invited, and like Heroic and Madlands have to go through qualifiers. So they don't have a fucking clue what's going on. Their year is like, last year seemed like, okay, we play some DreamHacks, maybe we qualify for a Cologne or something. That's kind of the goal. Play MDL. Like, what is the point of anything now? Is MDL going to make any difference next year? I have no idea. I didn't read the whole report, but I think that is also going to get kind of fucked. So playing MDL doesn't make sense because Pro League is going to be closed off, or most of it is going to be closed off.
I think it's still gonna work through MDL in some way. Like it's in some of the bottom part, especially when you like the report that came out.
But it has to be harder because from
probably
40 teams to 24 teams because they're gonna merge both regions into one.
But hold up a second. Let's cut this. Let's cut some bullshit out of this for a second. Like we're saying 40 teams, right? But we're including the teams that played in Australia and in Asia, right? Yeah. Okay, well, you can cut fucking 95% of those. You can get rid of every single name that isn't Renegades or Vici/Tyloo. Every single other one of those Asian team names, you just get rid of. They don't fucking matter at all. And there's a couple of teams in Pro League from the European division who probably shouldn't be in Pro League. And then look at North America. A couple of teams in North American Pro League who probably shouldn't be in Pro League. This isn't just a fucking gift of let's just give teams spots because they're like, here's what I think is going to happen, that there's going to be more better teams with an opportunity to play. Because right now, certain teams can't even get into Pro League because they don't want to go through all of the Mountain Dew League fucking jump through the hoop bullshit, right? Like there's a bunch of teams who, like Ants pulled out of Mountain Dew League because they didn't want to be involved in that shit. But Ants are a team who should probably be in Pro League over a team like fucking Sprout.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's pretty likely that at the time pulling out of MDL, they already knew about this all happening. So they knew that playing MDL was going to be useless because they're going to be invited into Pro League either way. So why waste time and potentially not even qualify if you can just pull out of MDL?
I feel like considering how many teams, like we're 1 month away or like a month and a half away from the start of these leagues. And up until now, we still don't know. They still clearly don't know which teams are actually going to be part of it. So are you really sure that Ed's like knew fucking what is it?
That
like
was around Cologne. So
like
July, and that is from what people said about the Lanxess agreement thing. That is around the same time when that document that is leaked, that version is about from around that time.
From that time?
So like someone must have talked before that as well. Like
I'm sure there were talks, but I'm not sure that they actually had a spot. Like
no, I'm sure they didn't have a spot, but they thought it was pretty likely that it's going to happen, right?
Got it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so we're probably going to use overtime on this little one here, but with all the information that we have right now, let's do this. Who thinks that ESL is currently winning? Thumb up if you think they're currently winning.
Fuck, I closed it. But
that's all good. I'll give you some time. I won't rush it here. With everything we know so far about ESL for the Pro League, we won't do the Pro Tour as a whole because I think the Pro Tour as a concept is great. But right now, what we know about ESL's Pro League is, did you guys just all thumbs up that they're winning?
I mean, why wouldn't we at this point? Like literally, no good teams have been announced for the other one.
That's true. So we're just doing the two. We're doing the two things.
Oh, okay. I thought.
Yeah, we're looking at all three across the board here. Like we got Blast, B-site, and ESL. Right now, with what ESL have been able to tell the world, it's basically nothing.
I think it's still ESL though. I think it's still winning because Blast still doesn't have as much of the pie as ESL does at this point as a whole. Not just with the league, but as a whole, obviously ESL as an organizer have the most, or just if you want to Google MTG, just with DreamHack altogether. Because they might as well just go together.
We're talking just about like the league, like Blast compared to Pro League compared to B-site.
Yeah, ESL Pro League to B-site.
I think Blast is the best one out of the three. The only difference is it's not really a league. I mean, it kind of is, but it's like depends how you look at it, right? Like it's not as much playing days, or maybe it is. Like at the start, it's 12 teams, right? So that makes it a bit different. But I think for them, like for me, like that's the best one really, because it's the format's really good, like as we already talked about, like for all of the above, and there's no like scheduling issues, there's no uncertainties about Blast, like and no one's asking you to commit for 10 years to play Blast, like I'm sure we have some sort of an agreement with them, but it's nothing crazy in terms of longevity, right? So that's also one of the issues, like with some of these leagues, like or some of the talks, like people want you to commit for such a long period of time, and I'm like, so what are you offering me for this? Like, like in esports, like it's crazy to talk about like 4 or 5 years, even 3 years. Anything longer than 2 years is like, whoa! Like there has to be an exit clause in my opinion. Like you want me to commit to something, you want it to be for 5 years, okay, but I want to be able to be out after 2 if what you are promising and what you're talking about is not manifesting itself, you know, like I don't want to be locked in with you for 5 years. Like some of the players will retire in 5 years, you know, like, and you wanted to sign some stuff. Now people will, you know, you like, I just think it's like a bit ludicrous to.
If anything, I think that says that ESL is winning more, but because people are willing, not confirmed yet, but it seems like based on the reports that people are willing to sign into 5-year deals with them, which gives them more power in this kind of it doesn't mean that it's a better league, but from their standpoint, like organization versus organization.
I think a big point here is, you know, the fact that ESL has been around for so long, and they've really upped their game in the last 2 years or so, right? So, like, you're talking about stuff where you have a new league coming in, like, people behind it are new to this, right? Like, of course, FaCEIT as the organizer and they're running the league, like, there's not going to be any problems with that. They know how to do that, right? But it's hard for you to commit for that, and then on the other side, it's something that's been around for a pretty long time, right? So people naturally, like the way I see it, they're leaning more towards ESL because of this. It's like known versus the unknown, and what the other side is offering isn't really something like, you know, life-changing that's gonna make you like, oh yeah, like let's go for this, you know, like it's worth the risk or something like that. And I think that's the problem, that by inertia, you know, I guess if that's a good way to put it, like by inertia people are leaning towards that, where whether that's good or bad, like something like that, only time will tell. But you know, there needs, you really, I don't think this is the right way to look at things, you know, like you need to look at things objectively and kind of decide based off of that, and at the very least use this as an opportunity to see some of the changes that you wanted to make to the circuit or to the league itself, like whether that can be done. Because now actually, you know, there's a competitor where you can say, okay, you guys like don't want to make these changes, you don't want to do this, I'm going to that league. And if enough teams do this, you know, one of the two leagues is going to have a very hard time like attracting viewers, attracting like money to it, generating revenue, all of things like that. Because at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is the teams and the players. Like if you don't have the best teams, you won't have the best games, and you won't have the most viewers, you won't generate, like you won't attract sponsors, and you won't generate revenue. And as we've discussed throughout the show, like that's what has to happen in the near future. You know, people have to at least see ways of getting their money back. Otherwise, like things are going to start scaling down.
Yeah, and none of us want to end up there. Well, I want to get paid more.
I'm sure you don't want to go back to digging holes. I don't want to do whatever I was supposed to do, like
we got
in Serbia. So
we got one last little point here. Is do we think Counter-Strike as a whole is gonna be better? Like, so going into 2020, I think that the four of us have a decent idea with the knowledge we can take that we can't really talk about, what the calendar is going to look like for us, either personally or for the Counter-Strike scene as a whole. Do we think that the flow-on effects of everything being segregated a little bit more, or there hopefully not being as much overlap of tournaments and traveling from fucking America straight to Sweden and then playing a tournament the same day?
Just say you want us to say yes, Chad. You might as well do that.
Do you think that the year of Counter-Strike in 2020 will make more sense?
Where's my button?
Okay, Prof. I want to. We got 1:30 left. So why?
I think the schedule isn't going to be actually better. The first 2-3 months are going to be leagues and not a lot of things going on aside from Katowice, from top tier level. And then after that, it's going to be super hectic with the major, and then the Cologne, and then as well the DreamHack event, the Masters in Jönköping. So the schedule isn't going to be better. It's just going to be like kind of shitty games for the first couple of months, because leagues, especially leagues that are just starting with changing the format, changing a lot of different things, I don't think it's going to be great at the start. So I don't believe in leagues being super exciting. Maybe they prove to be different. If in that case, okay. But I'll run with what I know from the today's standpoint. And then moving forward with the major qualifier things and all of that, the schedule is going to be awful. There's going to be people playing right off with the player break again, but maybe not the major, maybe a smaller tournament. So I don't think the quality of CS is going to be better.
I mean, quality-wise, like if you're looking at this anyway, like especially this in this first few months is obviously teams have more time, at least in between, because like from what we know, these leagues or blasts are going to be pretty short, but the leagues are probably going to be like somewhere along the lines of a month-long, like a running league where people are in the same place all the time. And obviously, they're not going to play too many games a week. In that sense, they're probably going to play like 2-3 games a week or something, which obviously gives them a lot of time to practice off of that time. So I feel like quality-wise, the CS, at least in this first part of the year, first half, I think is going to be a little bit better, especially like with teams having a bit more time to review stuff and just refresh things.
Better or worse, Janko?
I think it's an easy question. Like better because it gets better every year. Every year Counter-Strike is better than the last one because teams always like try to catch each other up, right? You're coming up with new stuff. You always have teams like who have more time than others who are not maybe invited to every tournament or don't play every tournament, so they have more time to come up with new stuff. You steal some things from them.
Can I rephrase the question? Because I think we all agree from that perspective. But if we had the tournament format as it was last year, in this year, would it be better? Like
you're talking about just the schedule wise?
Yeah.
Schedule wise, I think it was fine until this major thing. Like I think this major thing, depending on what it's going to end up being, because I'm not sure what it is or what it will end up being. I think that makes it much worse because whole point of making the majors at a different time was so it's not right after the player break, and now right at the end of the break and right after the break, you're supposed to have 2 of the qualifying tournaments out of the 3, the third one being the previous major, which is ridiculous. Like why did we change this at all then if it's going to happen like that? So depending on what that ends up being, I think that's then a problem, because now with just like 1 or 2 leagues instead of 3, and picking your tournaments a bit more, you can actually create a normal schedule for yourself and prepare for each tournament properly and have time to rest and all of this stuff. But with the major, it might just add a lot more stress,
Well, that's going to open up a lot of questions, and we actually have a segment a little bit later where we're going to dive deeper into that. But for now, Janko and Twitch chat, I don't want anyone to go anywhere because we got everyone's fucking favorite part of the show. It's Janko versus the Twitch chat, I guess.
Bring it on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Tonight's show of Are You Smarter Than Twitch chat. We do have a Serbian coming all the way here to your airwaves to be taking part. Now, Janko, we don't dwell on what Twitch chat has at their fingertips. We like them. We're just going to get this one underway. Now, if you beat them, you'll be the first person to beat them. I think people have only drawn so far. So let's see what goes on here. Lucas would have given you a link for the quiz. We're going to get that one going. And what we want you to do is we want you to vote. We don't want you to say what you pick until the time has run out, because Twitch chat will just copy your answer. So let's get this one underway here, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You're just going to click on the answer that you think, and they won't be able to see it to the end. Now, I'm going to read these out. YNK and NiKo lost to Rain's team in a qualifier for Katowice 2014. Which other player was in that team?
I do this at the end, you said, right? At the end of the time.
No, you can press, but just don't say.
Okay. A. Jacob, B. Rubino, and C. Zeves. Which other player was in that team?
I know the answer to this one. I hate this. I hate this qualifier. I hated that game. Like we lost both maps. We lost both maps in like in overtime or something like that, or 16-14. And then when I joined the team, or when I was talking to Rain at some tournament, he was saying like he was playing like on a TV or something like that, or I don't know. Like that's just when he was. And of course, okay, the timer is off, so now I can say it, right? So, like, so of course Jacob is on that team as well. So it turns out like it's this team that actually has sick players who at the time, half of them like no one knows who they were, and they're just like actually really, really good players, and they're like very hard to play against, like party astronauts, dude. Like that's their name. And we were grinding so hard for that qualifier, like trying to qualify, and we lost both times. It was super frustrating. So this one I will not forget.
Okay, so Twitch chat got it right as well. So we're 1-1. Let's get question number 2 underway here. Which 2 players did coldzera take down with his AWP? I assume this is the jumping shot.
The jumping double.
There's not enough here in the question, but this is the jumping double that we're talking about. We've got A. Simple and ELEAGUE, B, Simple and NiKo, C, Nitro and ELEAGUE. So for those of you who missed it, it's when coldzera was over towards the van position on Mirage, and he jumped and he orked two guys through one another. Well, you may have seen it, you may not. And time is up, Janko. Who'd you pick?
Shit. What? It's not. For me, it says 15 more seconds.
Oh shit! All right.
You sure? I know this one is this one. I'm just gonna like guess it. You know, I have no idea. I know Adren was the first one.
Yeah, I know that Adren was the first one.
But after that, like, no, not yet. I click it now.
Okay. Well, Twitch chat's gone for Simple and ELEAGUE. Janko's gone for Simple and NiKo. What's the correct answer, Lucas? Simple and ELEAGUE. Right.
Damn it.
There's no way they know that. Surely not.
No one knows this. Like, you just open the highlight and then you check. But I had this one. I had to like just blind guess.
All right. Question number 3. How many questions, Prof? 5?
5, just 5.
Okay. Question number 3. How many major finals did NIP lose? Was it A2, B3, or C4? I remember 2 of them. Was there more finals for NIP, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, they're going to Google anyway, so
That's
I will
true.
tell you that there is more than 2. So I'll just make it easier for them, make it like 50-50, you know. But
Can they work it out? That's the question.
Not
They're
yet.
just spamming away. You can click whenever you want.
You can click
they won't see
it. It just shows up at the end.
But these motherfuckers
Yeah, but
here,
I'm also like, I was also like,
thinking
kind
about
of
it.
thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, oh dear. Okay. So the correct answer is 4. Twitch chat got it correct. Janko's gone with 3.
There was 2 to Fnatic. There was the one to VP, and then I must have.
Well,
LDLC?
20
There was the one to LDLC at DreamHack Winter. That's the one I forgot.
Michael.
Or Envious. Yeah. No, the.
It was LDLC at the time.
Yeah, with Michael, yeah.
Yeah. That one I forgot. Shit.
So they've been in 5 major grand finals. Jesus Christ.
I mean, they made 5. They made 5 in a row. Yeah.
Well, that's an accomplishment of some variety, I suppose.
This is the one that's gonna make me lose.
When was the last time existence made it past the group stage of a major? A, 2013, B, 2014, and C, 2015. I want to say that in 2015 is when he lost to me on Mirage. I don't want to sway any answers here. Just want to say that at one of the majors in 2015...
Does one go through a group stage after losing to SPUNJ? That is, no. I think that's a big tip right there.
No, you don't. You don't.
This was 2014, Chad, or 2015?
That was 2015, but there was lots of majors that year, so that was just Cologne.
I think this is a trick question, but I don't have the balls really to go for it. Ooh. Oh, thank you. Now I know. It's always like whenever you see like what the Twitch chat answers, you know, like you're right or not.
Oh, but neither of you are.
No, I wanted to go for it. I was like, I wanted to go for it, but I was like, surely they made it at some point, like in 2014, but they didn't.
Yeah, it's a fucked up statistic.
Well, you can't win, Janko, but we got one last question anyway. This will be question number 5.
Can we play again?
You can come back in another episode. We'll get some easier questions for you. I'll write them up.
We'll rig it if we need to.
First major to feature an offline qualifier. Was it A, Katowice 2015? Was it B, Cologne 2015? Or was it C, Cluj, which was also in 2015? Now this one here is an easy one.
Well, for you, because, yeah.
Look, don't tell him.
I think I know. This was like, I worked this one, so...
Oh, you're right, Prof. Okay.
And there it is.
Never mind. Never mind.
So Katowice, it was in the same hotel that we always stay in the conference room, and I beat 3D Max, which was Natu's 3D Max, but he was getting married, so he wasn't there, and Dignitas, and then we qualified for the major. Get fucked. All right. Well, guys, it used to be much harder back when I was a player. Now you just get in for free, basically. But you don't actually, because Valve have fucked some things. This is another perfect segue, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about these major changes. Prof or STYKO, would either of you, whichever one of you is quicker, like to give us a bit of a rundown, a TLDR on what the fuck Valve have done?
I think this is Milan's.
Yeah, I can do it. Basically, Valve have not been happy with the way they had invites to majors, the way they determined the legends and the challengers up to now. So they've changed it a little bit, which means that instead of just the major determining the top 16 teams, basically they get invited next time. First the top 8 to the actual major, the bottom 8 to the new challenger stage. They added 2 more events to help with the ranking, to help with these invites, which are obviously also going to be organized by other organizers. So they are basically asking tournament organizers to suggest their tournaments to help with the ranking for the next major, for the fall major of 2020. Yeah, that's about the gist of it. Obviously, there are some rules about it. There has to be 24 teams. It can be like separated into stages. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 24-team LAN tournament. It could be like an online part of it and then leading into a LAN tournament with like less teams than just the 24. And like there's a bunch of other rules that I'm not going to go into right now because it's too long and I don't remember all of them. But yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, there's a certain bit of criteria. Now, I think that everybody would agree that having teams were going into majors with like coaches or with the goal of just making the top 8 to retain that spot, right? So I look at that and I think this is a much better way to do it, because without knowing the caveats of when the tournaments have to run or anything like that. But the idea of having teams having to re-qualify, meaning they have to be in good form or they couldn't have just changed roster or whatever, like the fact is they still have to be competing at a high level to show that they're worthy of the spot at the next major. I think like we would all agree that that's a positive, right? Like, does anyone see that as a negative, having to re-qualify to be a team in the major?
No, it's definitely a good thing. I mean, we see that just people are getting that spot and then selling teams like crazy did for a higher price, even though they probably won't make it deep into the tournament, and they're sticking with a team that they probably don't want to stick just to cling on to a spot. So as any way we can kind of shift this up to have like a shorter time span and more achievements being built into the major spot, then I think that's a good thing.
Okay, but now we can kind of get into the next part, and Janko made a tweet about this, I believe, and I also made a tweet or two about this. Can you get that picture ready, Lucas, that STYKO did up before?
Oh, yeah, so, it's on Discord.
Just so everybody understands the situation, STYKO didn't go over all of the criteria needed to run these events, but basically the calendar at the moment, if just trust us, because we're not going to lie to you, we have no reason to here, but the calendar at the moment, there might be a couple of weeks off here and there, but realistically for the tier 1 teams, once we start next week, shit's just going. Like, maybe you don't play, you play the first group, you don't play the second 2 groups, but shit is just going from when we kick off, and it's not going to stop. So for Valve to come in here, and now what is primarily scheduling this over the player break, right? That's what they've done. They put this over the player break. They've now said to TOs, you have to, if you want to do this, if you're an established TO like a DreamHack or an ESL who already have their Colognes, their Masters, these kind of events, which are now part of the Pro Tour, you have to abide by our rules to run this tournament, which assumably would be featured in Counter-Strike, I assume. Just bring it up whenever, Lucas. They basically put some of the biggest TOs who run these events, at least standalone events anyway, because B-site aren't running standalone events, and Blast are now running an actual tournament. What they've basically done here is say, you have to run standalone events by these criteria to be considered, let's just call it a mini major. But there's no fucking time. And if I'm ESL, I'm not changing my format now of the ESL Pro Tour to fit this thing that Valve have just done. Why the fuck would you bother doing that? You literally just did this whole thing.
Let's just explain the grid of this, right? Because those 2 events, I'm going to call it major ranking events. It's not an official name, but I'm just for to have a name for it. Those 2 major ranking events have to fall between July and September. That was one of the criteria that Valve came up with, right? And if that makes sense, obviously, like you want to have it in the middle of the 2 majors and not too close to either one. Because of the minor stuff and stuff like that ahead of the second one, and also because obviously like in that time teams form will have changed, so those 2 events will make more sense, to help with the ranking. So they have to be between July and September. The problem with that is, as you were saying, Cologne is something that ESL will probably not change criteria for, especially with the ESL Pro Tour and the way people qualify for that already. the thing is, I feel like that could be combined. The problem is I don't think Valve would really appreciate having 8 teams go directly to Cologne and the other 16, you know, play in the line qualifier that is set up right now for it, right? I'm guessing they wouldn't be glad that the top 8 teams would get direct, like, higher placement in the major ranking just via direct invites, right? So I assume Cologne is not going to be one of those events just because of the way that the qualifying system works from how ESL portrayed it so far. And then the player break follows right after that, right after Cologne. So that means all the way from the start of July to the middle of August, or almost from the start because Cologne starts on the 6th, to the middle of August, you can't have one of those events with the player break. And so they have to fall in from middle of August to the end of September, which is a month and a half for 2 big events, for 2 24-team events with potentially multiple stages, because they have to fit in 24 teams. So unless they want to do like a mega LAN tournament with all 24 teams, they're going to have to do it with multiple stages, potentially the first one online. And for 2 events to fall into that, including ESL Pro League, B-site, Blast, probably 2 of those will be in that time span as well, if not Blast, like at some point right after that. And obviously, like from October on, it's just the actual major stuff with the minors, and then the major itself at the beginning of November.
Yeah, just to clarify for people, like I see in the chat as well, saying the same thing that I thought initially was just like, Cologne is going to be one of these events. It most likely can't be because of the Pro Tour, as the Pro Tour gives slot and other ESL events give slot invites to Cologne, while these Valve ranking events, you need to invite the top 16 teams from the major, I think, something like that, need to be included, and then plus 8 teams additionally through some form of qualifiers or whatever. So overlapping either DreamHack Masters, Jönköping or Cologne or any of these ESL DreamHack events seems unlikely for these ranking events.
Yeah, it could be one thing that where it could potentially fit is if Valve were to set on the July to September period or the window, they could potentially like fit it in like the last week of June or something like that if there was a space for it. I think there's is that Jönköping there somewhere close to that actually? I think Jönköping's there.
I think it's just
June
like
9th to 9th
it's so
14th.
cramped that time, like because of the break. It's like okay, you make this tournament right after, you know, it starts 16th of August. So what? Players are going to be on their break and show up from the beach and go play this tournament? No, so you need to, at least 2 weeks before this event, you have to start playing, right? So that gives you only a 2-week window for you to travel somewhere if you want to have a proper vacation, but that's it. You have to maybe do that for a week and spend a week home to chill out with friends and family, and that's all you get. And then you go away for another 6 months, and then ESL decides to schedule a qualifier in the middle of a player break, and you spend a year with 3 weeks off in total. Like, this is insane. Like, with the amount of travel, and especially like for talent, it's different because you're not competing. So you don't have the stress of this. Like, you're just doing a job. Like, you're talking about CS. Like, it's the best thing. When you're competing, there's a lot more stress involved, you know, like to perform, you know, pressures from all sides, so forth, right? Like, you really need time off not to do anything, right? So that's what worries me. If it cannot be Cologne and it cannot be a tournament that's already in the calendar, it has to be another tournament on top of it. Even if you ignore the player break, there's still a lot of tournaments that are important that you have to play, so you won't even have that much time in between them to practice, to change things, right? Like, you're just going to be going from a tournament to tournament, maybe even for 3-4 weeks in a row, and none of these tournaments is like, you know, something that you can really skip, because towards the end of June, I think, is when this like Blast final is, or something else as well. Then from that you have Cologne, and then what from after that you will have one of these qualifying tournaments. Like, that's pretty crazy to me. Like, that's the part I don't like. I like the change that more recent results are going to be more relevant for you to make the major. I think that's better even for teams, because you have teams who want to change an extra player, but they don't because of this 3-player core thing, right? So then it's like you're stuck for this just to have your spot at the major, especially if you're from EU, because like going through the minors here is way more difficult than any other region, and that's understandable. But in reality, like, if you don't make this change and you don't believe in this team, like, you're not going to beat these other teams anyway and keep your slot, right? Unless you're some really, really talented squad. So like, it's counterintuitive in a sense.
I'm also kind of perplexed about the way that Valve presented the previous changes, to the scheduling of the majors, which was that they were gonna go down from 3 weeks to, let's say, like 16 days or something like that. It is now, or 15 days, to reduce the majors' impact on the calendar. But obviously, like with this coming in, obviously it's making things much worse. Of course, you can argue that those two like major ranking events aren't necessarily like completely like a mini major, like SPUNJ was calling it. They're still like normal events, but obviously, like with the criteria that Valve have put in on those, they're obviously going to have to change compared to what you would have normally, especially if they're like to 18 tournaments at the end.
The fact that Valve's going to put in $250,000 to 2 extra
tournaments
a year, that's $500,000. And I would say, like, this is the thing. There was a rumor late 2018 or 2018 at some point that Valve were going to run like a third event, or they were going to have a TO run a third event towards the end of the year, and count that it wasn't going to be a major, but their tournament was going to be featured within the client. Now that never came through, but I would assume that with these, if you're getting TOs to run these and they're part of your cycle to go to the major, just like the minors, that you would hope that these things would be featured within the client, right? So
probably, yeah.
My question isn't even where are we going to fit them, it's who is now going to run them. Because the 3 biggest TOs that we have in 2020 are Blast, B-site, and ESL. Now, they're all doing their own things. B-site are self-contained within their league. Blast have their spring and they get the 2 series, whatever, and then ESL have the Pro Tour, which is year long.
Well, so, I'd say DreamHack is bigger than B-site though.
DreamHack is part of the Pro Tour though.
But yeah, but if you tie that in with the Pro Tour, it's part of ESL's like whole package, right?
Oh, that way.
So
yeah.
Here's the question: who's going to be pitching these things? So that
Star Series is one.
Yeah, but Star Series, I would assume, don't have at least anything that we have public, anything on the horizon at the moment, and then they're going to have to come in and then pitch these and run these all themselves and just hope that they can, get teams. Because a part of this as well, B-site, Blast, and Pro Tour, I assume, all of these teams competing in all of these leagues are going to have different agreements of some variety that you have to compete in this, or you're in this group, or what. It's just not going to work.
Well, at the same time, though, like, do you expect B-site and Pro League to go up against major stuff, though? Like, of course, with all this in mind, these leagues have been set up in some way, but there's still half a year before the second, or more than that, before the second season starts. So there's definitely time for adjustment. Do you actually expect ESL and B-site to clash with major stuff?
Yeah, but this is also where, like, Val, like, I understand, but you have to be either hands-on or hands-off. Like, right now, they're doing neither. Like, okay, you don't want to involve yourself too much. You have the majors, and that's it. Like, these TOs, they need to find a way to make a living, and they're trying to, like, work around these schedules that we saw what happened the end of last year with Blast ECS and Pro League being 1 week after another on 3 different continents. So, like, you're trying to avoid this, and these venues, like, everything has to be planned at least a year in advance, or 9 to 12 months in advance. And then Valve comes in and says, oh yeah, by the way, we're just gonna put in like these 2 very important tournaments in a 2-month span. Like, they don't even give you any way in between, like 6 months, this or that. No, they just like put it in there. So you cannot expect tournament organizers to jump every time Valve changes something. Like, for me, I look at TSL. Why would they even want Cologne to be one of these tournaments? Yeah. They're better off without that. Cologne has more than established itself as the flagship event for all of Counter-Strike. Like, Cologne can be a better event than a major if depending on where the major is and which are the teams and so on and so on. They're like, that's an event that's always going to be amazing, right? Has the teams, has the fans from all over the world, has everything, right? So I don't want to make this tournament 24 and invite the teams you want me to invite and see them the way you want me to see them. Like, this tournament is better off without it. So it's going to be hard for them to kind of figure out when they're going to do it, and for it to be at a time where players are not going to be mad about it either.
The timing is definitely the biggest problem, just because those leagues having to fall.
Players will definitely be mad. I don't see. I think like the best case scenario is what Striker mentioned, the beginning before Cologne, have the first one just before Cologne, maybe have a week in the month before and the finals in that week before Cologne, and then one after the player break that is not immediately after the player break. That would be like the ideal scenario that we could get. And it's kind of spread out. We have the major in May, then we have a month, then one event, then we have 2 months, and the next event, and then we have a month and a half until the second major. But what if we can pull back the grafting, the schedule? I think that another part of the schedule that is pretty difficult is that after those events is when the minors can start, because only after all of those finish, we know the teams that are at the majors, and we have 1 month for the whole minor cycle to be played out. So that means open qualifier, closed qualifier, traveling to a minor, getting visas, and getting visas itself for like CIS people or people from like Asia, it's a month. So I'm not sure, like this seems like back to a lot of visa issues for the minors. It might, like, definitely seems like that's going to be a thing happening.
I feel like there has to be a certain plan around this though. Like it just seems too crazy for the minors, everything within a major to happen within a month and a half. Like I can understand why Valve wanted this way, just to like reduce the impact and stuff like that, all that kind of stuff. I can understand it, but I feel like there has to be the different plan about this in some way, like some plan with the minors that are going to change down the line. That's what I'm kind of thinking at this point. But yeah, I mean that's kind of just an idea.
It's also hard to see how this event like can have a qualifier. Like, so imagine if you are to run a qualifier for this Valve event, because they said 16 teams by the major ranking and 8 by the process of the TOs choosing, meaning it can be 8 invited teams, it can be 8 teams through a qualifier. But if you put a qualifier for this as well in the schedule, like it's going to be impossible to do everything. So you're almost forced to do invites at least for 6 out of the 8, and maybe the last 2 you just put a closed invite qualifier and that's it, like, and you run it in like a day or 2 if you really wanted to. But like just a lot of it seems like a lot of issues.
The ideal way to deal with this would just be to have, well, not exactly this what you're saying, but just generally the ideal way a tournament like this would happen would actually be a 24-team LAN event. Obviously, the ideal way would be a 24-team online event, but nobody wants that. Nobody wants online events to have such an impact on major ranking. And of course, it's one of the requirements as well. At least 8 teams have to be at like a final LAN out of these 24. Obviously, it's still quite low for just 8 teams out of the original 24, but at least there's something there, right? But the ideal way would just to be a 24-team LAN event for just for. So I mean,
that, like, especially because this is like intercontinental. Like, how do you make the online part happen? That doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you compare like Renegades from Australia against like Gen G against, I don't know, like
Heroic or whatever?
Like Heroic. How do you say who is better? Like these teams, like anyone can be better. So do they all have to go to? So I think there has to be at least a 16-team LAN for it to be like to make any sense.
It's just generally it's gonna be so hard to pull off properly. Like I can see that just like it's gonna be like segregated into like 3 different regions and stuff like that. Because there's no way somebody will hold a 24-team LAN event. I can see Star Series maybe trying to pull that off, but I just don't see anybody else trying it, especially with the time constraints and stuff like that. They will just use the online part of it somehow, and obviously that's not ideal.
So I think that this is Valve's knee-jerk reaction to everybody saddling up to go exclusive or like soft exclusivity. I think if any of these people working for any of these leagues come out and they say our league's open as qualifiers, that they're not being honest with what's going on behind closed doors, of people signing deals or people having buy-ins or people being member teams or people doing having rev share splits. Or there's always needs to be an incentive for the organizations to be a part of these leagues now. Now you fold that in with what Valve have done here. They've basically just taken that and they said, well, if you have member teams and you have this and they don't fit in with the teams that play at the major and you want to run our tournaments and get a free 250k added to the prize pool and potentially be featured within the game, well, fuck everything you just wrote down because you have to abide by our rules now. That's kind of what it feels like a little bit to me, because if it isn't, then it's so misguided to where Counter-Strike is currently at that they're completely out of touch. So if it's a play here that is to try and keep everything stabilized so we can keep our open circuit and nobody can get a monopoly and shit, fine. But they announced it too late because, like Janko was talking about before, the tournaments are planned a long time in advance. But not only that, it's not like the start of the year these different companies all popped up their heads and said, yeah, let's go on these massive new ventures and shit. This is stuff that's been in the work for a long time. So I question here what Valve is trying to achieve, because in my opinion what they've achieved is just a clusterfuck. Like, that's what's going to happen this year. Is now it was meant to be, at least the way that I was looking at it, quite clear. I was looking at the TOs I wanted to work for. I was like being able to pick and make sure that I could have a normal fucking life. Players were probably doing the same. And now it's gone, well, guess what? The time that you thought you had a month off to actually, fucking relax, you could just be playing more tournaments. You could get fucked. And this is where I don't know. How do we get to the bottom of this? Like, Scoots said that it came as a surprise, the announcement. Okay. So that means that if it came to a surprise to the CSPPA, then that means they didn't consult anybody about this before doing
I wonder if tournament organizers might have had any like heads up information about this, because obviously this email went to them, right? So they obviously that's
as SPUNJ was saying, even if it was a month heads up, that doesn't mean anything. Like,
I'm just
and it wasn't 6 months for sure.
Yeah, probably not.
So either way, lots of.
I agree with SPUNJ about this being like a move from Valve just to balance out the kind of soft exclusivities everyone is trying to do right now.
Not to mention that now we have a third ranking. I don't have a Valve ranking. I have HLTV.
Well, I wouldn't call it.
No, it's not a third. It's a fourth.
This is the ESL Pro. The ESL ranking.
Don't forget
amazing,
the Gosu Gamer ranking.
Oh yeah. The most relevant one out there.
I wouldn't necessarily call this a ranking. Like, obviously, it's just an invite system based on a different set of criteria.
Well, it is because
you can call it a ranking.
They were also
I guess.
mentioning like decay from the match. Like, how are they gonna, how much is each of these tournaments going to count? What is going to be the process of this? Like, how many points do you get? Does it, like, if you were top 4 at the major, do you automatically have enough points for the next major?
I assume they will have like a good system behind.
Yeah, but that's
the
only thing you can do. You can only assume, right? Like, that's what all of us can do. Like, you don't know anything about this, and this is supposed to be the most important tournament in the circuit, right? The most prestigious one at the very least, right? Something that obviously every player wants to win in his career, and it's like getting more and more bucked.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this is also a result of like the two leagues, or just generally the plans for 2020 not being clear until so late. Obviously, still not being clear until now, when they were supposed to happen in a month and a half. So I wonder how much Valve even knew about this, like when they were starting to put this into reality.
Look, if they wanted to find out, they could find out just like you found out when you want to find out. Like, it's for them, it's 10 times easier than for you. So there's no if they don't know it just because they don't want to they don't want to put in the time to find out, right?
And it's not only that; it's as well as that is the sense that these TOs, before they do anything, which is considered. There was a TO who I was consulting for like a year and a half ago who were asking questions about wanting to do something in the maps of Counter-Strike. So when we were watching, there was going to be stuff in the maps. The other TOs actually have done before, but they had to check with Valve that was okay, and Valve said, no, that's not okay. We don't want you editing the maps in that way, right? So no. The TOs check with Valve before they do any of these things. They have to pay for a license, right? You have to have a license to...
Was this the FaCEIT major?
No, this was further back than that. I say a year and a half. What year are we in? 2020.
No, I was just thinking that at the FaCEIT major they were supposed to have something like along these lines, but then, whatever.
Time's going real quick, Janko. It's going so quick.
Whatever.
But yeah, like the TOs have to check with Valve. So the fact that the Valve had no idea this was happening, I think that's a bit bullshit.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
It doesn't matter either way, really. I think what our discussion has gotten to the bottom of, and maybe we should see if we can get somebody from a TO on who might want to talk about it from their perspective in a future episode or some shit. But right now, from what we have discussed, it sounds like Janko is saying for teams, it's going to be fucked. The way that we talked about fitting into the calendar, it sounds like it's going to be fucked. The way that TOs are going to have to shape their events to fit this is going to be fucked. Who's even going to run the events? There's so many question marks right now that Valve need to come out and maybe give some. Well, actually, they're not going to do shit. I don't give a. What was I going to say? I was going to say give some answers. They're not going to come out and do anything. We're just going to wait and see what happens, and we'll deal with the mess when it happens.
It's up to TOs to come up with the format of these things. Like, sure, there are some requirements, but it leaves a lot of things for the TOs to decide. You know, the way how many of these teams are actually going to go through the online part of it, or like how many teams are going to go through the LAN part of it. So it's like literally they have not put together a specific system for these things to work. So this is going to have to wait on the organizers, all the suggestions that they come up with. And then obviously, like down the line, we're probably gonna start hearing some things about it.
And as you just looking back into history, into the minors, for example, how many issues did we have with them, with the invites, with the qualifiers, with how everything's being run, with the dates? It took us like 4 years to get to this point where everything is fine. And now they drop this, and now this will take like 2-3 years for people to get it right. So it's gonna be shit.
And what Prof is basically saying, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody at home, Rio will be the last good major we have for 2 to 3 years, thanks to Valve fucking the entire cycle. So everyone enjoyed Rio.
The major itself is going to be fine. The problem is what happens before that.
Well, it might not be fine.
Well, okay, fair enough. I guess, okay, one thing that I'm really worried about is this, are those 2 ranking events being like majorly online. Like with just 8 teams of those 24 being required to be on LAN, that's the big part for me.
Have you seen this new team, STYKO? I think it's like Axis, I think they're called.
Oh, yeah.
And they got this player called Legion.
I know. I've been dealing with this
so good.
The last few days.
He is really good. So like they could be playing in the online qualifier.
Look, and maybe... I immediately when I saw him first, I immediately went to Peter to ask like if they've done any research about this guy, or if anybody has. Because I have not heard about him, and he's apparently Czech, and he's playing with another Czech guy who I do know, or at least I've heard of. And yeah, I have no idea who that kid is. He has a new Facebook account, he has a new FaceIt account, and stuff like that. So I feel like he's fake, but who the hell knows?
Some might even say a fantasy. Lucas, we're into this one earlier. Let's go to the fantasy, mate. Bang it up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, there's a lot we could talk about with that major one. We might revisit it in future episodes if more information becomes available to us. But right now, we're going to be getting into the fantasy. But the fantasy will be based around DreamHack Leipzig, which will be the first kind of tournament that you guys will be sinking your teeth into in 2020. Now, let's just go through the teams here. Lucas, the producer, has us up on screen right now. Lucas, just scroll through all the teams. We'll read them out as they're there. We've got Heroic, we've got Cloud9, they've recently signed. We've got Mad Lions in there. North, who have just added MSL. Virtus Pro, we've got Renegades, who are formerly Greyhound. We've got Sprout, and we've got Big. So there's lots of cool like little mini storylines to talk about for this one. We get to see the German teams going toe-to-toe. We get to see the best of the rest as far as Denmark's concerned. What's the most interesting team here for you, Janko?
I'm not sure. I'm like, when I see VP, feels like you haven't seen them in such a long time. Like they had that great run at the major, and then after that they and Moscow, of course, and after that it seems like they kind of dropped off a bit. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. Also Cloud9 like on LAN, because they qualified for a lot of stuff recently, like online. But I just am not, I'm curious to see if they can replicate that on LAN, because on paper, like it's a group in which when you look at their online results, they should come out of it like and make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's a weird one with these guys, right? You make it to a major grand final, your expectations are obviously set like very high. Same kind of situation as what we had going on with Ents. But then if you don't get any groundswell behind you afterwards, like they had the Blast event, right, in Russia that they did well at. Did they win it?
They won.
Yeah, they won.
Yeah. So they won it like straight after, but then that was about it, and they haven't really. I don't know. Did they even get a chance to compete in that many tournaments? I'm kind of blanking on Avantgarde.
They did Epicenter as well, and a couple of other. They did the DreamHack as well.
DreamHack Open.
They were at Summit as well.
Was it?
No, they weren't at Summit
or something like that.
They were ECS. They were there. ECS Season 8 finals.
Yeah, they were the finals of ECS.
Okay, so like
they had.
Thanks to that amazing format that DC has decided to have. But moving swiftly on.
That's all right. They're not running that anymore, so we don't have to worry about that. But where are we at here? I think that what we're going to try and do, guys, is we're going to try and get our fantasy talk in while we're talking about the teams and the games and what we're going to expect here. So let's go and grab all the other teams here that are in their group. So that would be Cloud9. Is it Cloud9?
Big Renegades VP.
Renegades and Big.
Okay.
Pro.
So let's talk about these 4 teams first. Let's work out who we think is going to go through and then let's start picking some players. We'll do the same thing we did last time where everybody kind of picks a player and we see if it works.
Like this tournament is super hard to actually pick people going through.
Exactly.
But I think like for this group, it should be Virtus Pro, and I feel like Cloud9 are going to do it. If not them, then Renegades. I would not bet on this big. They're 46th in the role right now. So, and they didn't even show. They played a couple of online games, lost to Sprout, lost to someone else, and yeah, not too convincing so far.
Well, I think that VP are going to go through 100%, right? Like, well, not 100%, but if we were to pick the front runner, that'd be those guys.
I honestly think like VP and Avantgarde have been the team who have been kind of like almost like the same as the old VP, like playing up to the level of their opponents. Where like they could easily get upset by any of these 3 teams, I feel like. So I'm not so sure about them actually. Like sure, like logically I would pick them too, just because I don't have like enough faith in either of those last 3 teams. But still, I feel like they could easily go out last in this group.
Well, if we just quickly look at the other group, right, which is North, Sprout, Heroic, and Mad Lions, I feel like that group is going to be harder to call than this first group, right? Because
I think also if we're talking about it from a fantasy perspective, like James is 119k, which is kind of cheap, and he's probably the best player at the event. So I think picking him is kind of a no-brainer to start.
Actually, yeah, I pretty much agree with that. Yeah.
All right, well, let's do James as the go-to man, and then the rest of us will pick a player and we'll fill it out from there. Janko, you got anyone here you've been playing in practice who's just a fucking god?
Well, you obviously look at the Germans, right? You talk about practice, no.
Oh dear.
But I
that's
mean,
that's an old one.
I think like the thing about this is you look at players who could stand out individually, right? So I would definitely put Oscar in there because like no matter which team he plays for, he has like strong stats, right? And you feel like even if they lose and don't make it out, he could still have very good stats for fantasy. So I would pick him. He didn't seem like he was super expensive, right?
He's quite cheap.
He shouldn't be like expensive.
180k. Buster is also, yeah, I think he's a good one, but I think, you look at Cloud9, you think like they're good, they'll make it through. I'm not so sure that any of, you don't know which player is going to stand out for them. Like I've seen like Floppy seems to be like their best player, but sometimes like someone else can have a great game and he can just have an average game. So I'm looking at these guys who are like, I know that they're gonna have great stats almost no matter what. So in that, like you can even, I know this A group, like I think Big will make it out. I don't know why. I think Big and VP will make it out of that group. So, but right now we're just picking offers. I was gonna say like Searson maybe.
Yeah, but Searson is super expensive as well.
It's 236
for some reason.
What the? Yeah, we can get Tabson then. Like he always plays well. Ooh, wow! Like
yeah, Tabson is pretty
why
cheap.
Why are they
honestly,
so expensive?
Yeah, Tabson's very cheap.
Tabson's pretty cheap.
Crazy. Yeah, we'll get Tabson there.
If we throw Tabson, we already picked James, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
so
we can put James as the saver, right? So that's fine.
Leave, that's all right. Leave that motherfucker right there. That's all good. Look.
That was supposed to be Oscar too, right? At least potentially for now.
Yeah, put him in for now. James, Oscar, and Tabson.
Especially with how cheap he is. Now we can actually go for some of the more expensive players.
So this is he's in Sprout.
At the bottom, second from the bottom.
Where's Stone? How much is he?
He is 194. He's actually pretty cheap too.
Get him as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea.
Good.
The only problem I have for them is their opening game is against Mad Lions. That's the biggest problem I have for them right there.
This B group is going to be super sick with 3 Danish teams and like 2 spots to go out. That's going to be super exciting.
But we have 225 left.
That sounds like a lot. Is that a lot?
That's a lot. That's most
like
most
200k is average for an average player.
Yeah.
Like
we could do like a kicker or a buster, somebody like that, right? Like if we think.
I was thinking about Bubsky.
Yeah, Bubsky and Bora. Well, we've already got Stan. I think we stay away from North until we see them play.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I wouldn't even know who to pick out of those players.
Kierby is definitely the pick there. He's also pretty cheap, 200k. So. I think Floppy, like in my team, I went for Floppy for 220. He was, since I got a lot of cash, I think it wasn't a big issue to get him in. But other than that, like, maybe just double up on one of the teams we think is going to do well. But that is just like,
but it's so hard,
random to know. Yeah.
Like I can imagine Mad Lions doing well, to be honest. Like they're the only team that I'm kind of like confident they're not going to go out in groups.
I think I picked Bubsky for my team. Like
I was saying Bubsky. I kind of like him for the last one.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Like he's our previous guest.
Pretty well for them, but
if he lets us down, yeah, we know where to blame him. Plus, this one's fine. This is just a group one that we've done here. So we've got James, Tabson, Oscar, see if he can come back from the grave. Old Stown and Bubsky. That's not a bad team at all. Now, I wouldn't mind, Prof, if you could quickly, just for the viewers, surmise a few of the things that have happened in the update to the Fantasy League.
Yeah, so like we just changed a bunch of the things that people complain about all the time. First of it being being able to pick five players from one team. So now it's limited to 2 players from one team max. So you can't pick like 3 or 4 Astralis players and just as they win the tournament you have 90% of the max points. So it's going to be more diverse. That's the thing. We also have points for like team performance. So if your team wins, you get 6 points. If your team loses, like the player's team loses in the game, you lose 3 points. And we changed some of the booster things, and just like a few smaller changes. But those are the 2 main things that changed.
Okay. Well, if you're playing fantasy, you know where to find a HLTV.org. Little button at the top says updated under. I'm sure you can read all the information you need there. It's also going to be in the news. Now, we're almost at finishing time for the show. We actually wrapped that fantasy part really quick, which I like. Janko, just before we close this bad boy down, is there any topics that either you want to revisit or bring up to have a bit of a say on before we finish for this evening?
I don't really know. I think we pretty much covered everything, no?
Did we get any questions for Janko from the tweets, ladies and gentlemen?
I don't know. I have to dig it up. But I have one question though for Janko.
Sure.
Obviously, you touched on at the beginning. You coached MIBR, big team, a lot of achievements, a lot of like historic players, egos, whatever that comes with that. Then you go to FaZe, which is kind of the same in that regard, maybe even worse. As a coach, it's obviously not going to be easy. You're not going to be able to implement everything you want. Maybe a bit more of a pushback on some things. Do you ever think like, why did I do this to myself? Why didn't I go to a team that people just like take me in, listen to everything I say, like worship me as the big boss?
Well, not really, because like I was kind of also looking for a challenge in a sense, like to make a team that's good or was the best for a while, to really like try and get them back there as well. And I want to have a team that had the players that I knew were capable of doing this, right? That just like needed help with it. And also I needed to go to a team where players at least knew me a little bit, like we had some sort of a connection where I knew that I would have at least some level of authority, right, within the team, and I have credibility with them, and not just go to some team where I don't know any of the players, and when I come up with something that's going to be different, that they're just going to say, what the fuck are you talking about, right? But in retrospect, like it was a big challenge, and I guess it was just more about learning how to manage the personalities on the team and how to like create a good atmosphere in the team, and how much that's important to how you perform, other than just like the X's and O's and something like that. But I do not regret going to these teams with big names and or instead of going to like a smaller team, where I could like basically have 100% control.
Have you learned something like big in that transition, basically, like from being an analyst, being on camera talent, and thinking about, okay, I'm now gonna go to coaching, and just like having this idea in your head, and then thinking about how it's gonna go to this point where you have obviously had some experience with it now, with two different teams, two different big teams. What, like, was there some big revelation to you that you didn't expect was coming, or anything like that?
I guess it was a lot like how much confidence actually impacts like your performance, right? Like it sounds like a cliche, but on how the confident players are, like the small things, the details, how different they can be. Like if you not make your players like and give them confidence through like practice and preparation and all of that stuff, doesn't matter how many strats you have, how good of a game plan you have, like what new things you found, if they don't feel confident to execute and they don't feel confident individually to play against the opponent, like you're not going to have a lot of success. And vice versa, if they are playing with confidence, if things are going well in that regard, you don't need anything crazy, in terms of your game. Like a lot of that stuff will come naturally from the players, at least the players I've coached, because a lot of them are, as we've touched on it, like experienced. They have a very high IQ for the game, right? So a lot of the things they will see, they will come naturally to them. So I think it was this like kind of, and that just doesn't come from the game. It comes from them being comfortable with things like, the schedule, things like that, like organizing things in a way where there's time for everything. So I think at the end it was that I maybe gave too much credit to, okay, I have a lot of good ideas about the game that teams are not that I think can be really good for teams, but I didn't I gave it maybe too much credit for how much this was going to matter compared to some of the things like just like basic stuff and managing the players and their personalities,
All right, and we got one more, Janko. This comes from a user on Twitter. I think his name was like Tony Slav or whatever. Right. And he said, at YNK, do you miss analyzing games, and do you think you would ever consider going back to the desk if things don't work out with coaching?
You mean more than right now?
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, let's assume that it all falls to shit.
I always have the same answer. I really miss the desk. I miss the camaraderie, like with the talent.
That's all gone now, anyway, man. Don't worry about it. It's all fucking dead anyway.
All right. So yeah, I miss that more, and the no stress environment sometimes. But the desk in itself, like, of course, I have nothing against, like, if I one day decide to give up coaching or things don't really work out for me, I would have nothing against, like, going back to the desk. I enjoyed that part of my career very much, and like in the future, why not? But right now, I'm happy where I am, and I'm excited about this year with the team.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that wraps episode 7 of HLTV Confirmed. Thank you for joining us once again. You can get all of the action in audio over different platforms, Spotify, Apple, all that kind of nonsense. If you head over to anchor.fm/HLTV, that one can be easy to find. Obviously, there's Twitter. They'll spam that in the chat right now for all of you who want to follow some of the nonsense we're doing there. We will be back next week. It's the 28th. Am I correct? 28th? Yep. We're going to have Semler as a guest. So next week, we're going to be back. That'll be the show before Blast. So we'll be doing fantasy again. We'll be recapping everything from DreamHack Leipzig. And we'll be talking all things Counter-Strike. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Janko for being here this evening. Prof, STYKO, Lucas. This has been another one. It's in the books. Good night, everybody.